Welcome to the Wake Her Up podcast. I am one of your hosts, Marcella Hill, along with my sister,
Sharon Johnson.
And today we are going to be talking about our marriages in detail, which that's going to be fun and
Not
scary.
too much detail.
But both of us have had massive perspective changes about marriage, and we're still married.
Right? And we're still married.
So we're trying to figure out how to take these new views, new beliefs, and still be married.
That's the ultimate goal, right?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's the goal, but today we're going to talk about it.
So yeah.
That's what we're doing. Okay, but first, I think there's so many people in this midlife thing. You know, people got married at 20, and when they were feeling great at their height of health, in love, high libido, and then here we are at 40 and 44, and lots of things have changed physically. A lot of people have no libido, and I think that the play of hormones is not considered in the effects of marriage. What do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of time it's easy to just say like, oh, well, the spark is gone. We're just getting bored of each other. I'm just getting older, instead of realizing like, oh, maybe my hormones are screwed up and something actually physical is going on right now.
Absolutely. I mean, I literally thought, I don't love Tage anymore at all because I don't want you to touch me and I don't want sex. And I had not even considered that it could be my hormones. So if you're listening to this right now, today's episode is sponsored by Joy Women's Wellness, which also has blokes for men. Get your hormones checked. You could really figure out, is it your husband or your hormones? Is it your marriage or your hormones? But no matter what you do, you should feel good. And then you can actually help yourself and your relationship. So Joy Women's Wellness, blokes, they're both doing 50% off. To get your hormones checked this month, go to choosejoy.co and you can use Wake Her Up for a big 50% discount to get your hormones checked, and his too. Get his checked too.
I just got my results back and I have no progesterone. I mean, at a tiniest amount of progesterone. So my testosterone's good. Estrogen's fine. Progesterone is so.
Oh, the happy hormone. You're missing it. That's weird.
Weird. Who would have thought?
Progesterone.
Anyway, really? So I'll let you know next week how I'm feeling because I'm going to start it this week.
I love that. Progesterone literally can help you feel a desire to connect with people. Isn't that interesting? That's what progesterone does. Yeah.
Which would be hugely helpful in, I don't know, maybe your marriage.
Maybe, right? Maybe. Okay. So hormones, get your hormones checked and then go to counseling and marriage therapy. So, okay, where do you want to start? Let's start with what we thought marriage was going to be.
Oh, yes.
Start there.
I absolutely prescribe to the Disney princess ideal, right? Oh, yeah. That marriage was literally everything. That finding the person that you loved was going to fix you, that nothing else mattered in life. And I just wanted to be a wife. That I was obsessed with boys from the beginning, all throughout elementary school, junior high, high school, college. It was my life. It was my world. That's all that mattered.
Same. If you go back in my journal since I was 12, boys. I mean, it was the ultimate goal. It was to find someone that's going to fall in love with you, would kind of say, hey, you are lovable and pretty because this guy likes you. That was it.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy is I've been thinking about it's not even that I was looking for someone to love. I was looking for someone to love me.
Absolutely.
I never gave myself it didn't matter who it was. I just wanted someone to desperately love me.
Yeah, I don't think I ever stood back in junior high. I was like, okay, out of all of these people, who would I love? Like
Yeah.
who is lovable and who would I enjoy loving and giving my time to and attention and spending time with? No, it was just like the vulnerable boy, the bad boy, the not even vulnerable. It's probably like the hardest one to get that could prove to me that I was like, I'm worthy of this guy's love. Like he's kind of messed up and a bad boy, but I got him to like me.
Yeah.
It was this race, this challenge, this like hunt.
See, I felt like mine was just like desperation. It was just this desperation for someone to love me and tell me that I was good enough, that I was pretty enough. And that's all I needed was to like, and looking back now, I see like how like lazy and selfish and self-centered that was and how that played into my relationships. And that like, I was probably a really shitty girlfriend to a lot of like, in a lot of my relationships because it was all about me. It wasn't necessarily like me showing them love, me going out of my way to express how much I enjoyed them and wanted to be with them and loved them. I didn't dote on them. I didn't baby them. I didn't do any of that because it was all, why do you love me?
You're making me question, was I a shitty girlfriend? Because I feel like I gave and gave and gave and gave. I mean, I was like, I would pour it all on. I would be the one skipping school to spend time with them or, leaving all the family stuff so I could go spend time with them. I would totally abandon all these things that were important to me so I could just spend time with my boyfriend, thinking that I was taking care of him. I would make cookies. I would make dinner. I would clean his house. I would like all the things, everything possible. I would fix up my hair. I would do all the things thinking that was being a good girlfriend, but was I doing it really for him or was I doing it so that he would like me? I don't know.
That was, and I know that was me, that it wasn't me expressing my love for them. It was doing things so that they would love me, which is different.
It is different.
It is different.
Yeah. Okay, so we both had lots of boyfriends, and we could go into boyfriend land, but
yeah,
I mean, honestly, okay, so my first marriage, I was in college. I met John, and he was the kid that said he wasn't ever going to get married. He wanted to live alone. And it was on. Like the challenge was on. I was like, "Oh, you're never gonna get married?" Yeah, right.
John was like cool.
Drummer, music, tall, dark, and handsome. I mean, and what do you call that? Like elusive? Or is that he was kind of like
a word?
Yeah, like mysterious, a little mysterious, He lived on his own in his own apartment. I'd never dated someone
which is a big deal when you're in college and they have their own place.
The rules of BYU. It was against the rules. So I was a little like, it wasn't like BYU approved housing. So he was just fascinating. He had this fast car and I don't know. There was something, that I was like, oh, you're going to be alone? No, you're not. You're going to fall madly in love with me no matter what. And, we ended up getting married. It is what it is. But I literally thought I had arrived. I had made it. This was the beginning of adulthood. And I am now complete. I am a wife and I got the guy and now I'm married and I'm complete. And now you just live in this like blissful adult land, I guess. I don't know what I thought, but I definitely thought I had arrived.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll go into like, okay, I can just say it. I don't have to say I'll now say how I got into my relationship with my husband and then we converge. We're so good at podcasting.
This is really good.
You can absolutely cut all this out. So my
I'm not going to.
Yeah, my backstory with Carrie is kind of the same, even though it's wildly different. We met in elementary school and we became really good friends in junior high. And I absolutely started crushing on him in junior high. And we dated for a short time. Then we broke up, and he was always like, Carrie Johnson, like I was always aware if he was at a school event, if he was in the cafeteria, like I knew kind of where he was. I wrote in my 8th grade journal that I was going to marry him, and he was kind of the same way. Like he was kind of mysterious, kind of a little quirky, like popular, super hot, but also like not. He was just different. He was just different and kind of like mysterious. And it absolutely was like my goal to like land Carrie Johnson. And we ended up kind of like going separate ways. And then like 21, 22 years old, we tagged back up again and got married. And yeah, it was definitely like, oh, I got Carrie Johnson. And now my life, it's weird because it was like, yes, my life is beginning. But now that I look at that, motherhood and being a wife was the ultimate goal. So it also, like, now I look at it, I'm like, oh, that was kind of the ending. Because like, what do you do after that?
Right.
There was no, like, you just get married and then you're married.
It's the end. Yeah. Well, the other thing too is that I think we have to go into the type of person that we thought we were supposed to marry, right? For me, I was looking for a guy that was in our same religion, right? That I could get married in the temple with, someone that was he was a Boy Scout. He had a good family. Mm-hmm. He went to church. We had this, that same belief system, and he checked all of the boxes. And I thought, if you marry someone that checks all of the boxes, then you are promised a good life and a good marriage and this like forever love.
No, I was literally taught, like, you marry the right person in the right place at the right time. But then I was also taught that the right person, that essentially any two worthy people can be married and make it work. Like that's what I was taught as a child and a teenager.
Yep.
That any two worthy people. So as soon as like you fall in love with someone, you marry someone who meets those qualifications, right? That you listed out and that you love. But it really didn't go much deeper for that, like, than that for me. It wasn't like, okay, like, what are the parenting styles here? What are relationship styles? Like, are we compatible physically and romantically? Like, none of that was in there, like, how do you address conflict? Or what about our hobby? Like, none of that was present. And, we had short engagements relatively to the rest of, Americans. And so you really don't have a whole lot of time to figure out if like you are going to live well together, if you can like cohabitate.
Right. I mean, John and I, we dated for a year and then it wasn't going well. I was mad that he wouldn't marry me. So I went to New York to be a nanny. And then we started dating long distance again. We planned he flew out to New York, and got engaged. And
your engagement was amazing, by the way.
Okay.
Most amazing engagement.
It really was. I mean, he surprised me in Grand Central Station. He flew in from Utah, surprised me in Grand Central Station with his guitar, sang a song, Angel Eyes, and by Jeff Healey. And it's all on video. Everyone started gathering around. It was like the dreamiest everything I could have ever.
It really was.
It really was magic. I love that I have
one thing right. It was the engagement proposal.
Oh, yeah, that was a dream, and I still like appreciate it and love that that was mine. But
that's awesome.
I forgot where I was going. Now I'm off track,
Oh,
but
I am so sorry.
Thanks a lot. Okay, so anyway, I forgot.
No, that's fine. We were talking about someone. Make us go back. I know that you were talking about something though that made me think of. You were talking about the list of things that men were supposed to be, right, before we married them. And it had me thinking about how I've just recently come to realize like how insane my expectations were for my spouse. And there was really no room for him to be like his own person because I became a wife. And so my expectations for me being a wife were like out of control, insane. And then add my mother on top of there, right? Just huge list of just unattainable expectations. And I came to realize that I had those same expectations for my husband and they were unattainable. I was always judging him. He wasn't enough, even though I didn't feel like it. I didn't think I was. I was just helping him be better. I just wanted a good life. I just wanted to do what we were supposed to do. I just wanted to do the right thing and to help him do the right thing, which is what I was taught I was supposed to do as a wife. And there was really no room for him being his own whole person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's exactly how I did my whole first marriage and part of my second marriage, where I just thought I'm supposed to help you be better. We're supposed to help each other be better.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm your person to like point out the things that aren't going well and that I'm going to save you. I'm going to save your soul and I'm going to save us and I'm going to lead our family. And also I'm not supposed to be the leader of the family. So I'm going to help you be the leader of the family. Right.
Yes.
I remembered what I was saying. Okay. So we got
Sorry.
engaged and then we planned the whole wedding from New York because we were going to save ourselves for marriage. Right. So we got married 7 days after I got back from New York. So I'd been in New York for a whole year. And we got married 7 days after I got back because we didn't want to risk like sexual sin and keeping us out of the temple. So we hurried and got married. And you were saying how we didn't even know that we were compatible to live together. We didn't even know that we were like technically sexually compatible. Like we hadn't worked through any of that. Right. And here we are suddenly married, both in college in our, I was 20. You know, I had no idea what I was doing, no clue. I left New York, the dreamiest place of my life, and woke up in this shitty apartment with no money. And there was my husband. That was my whole life. And I thought that I had arrived.
Like, when was the first time that you were like, oh, shit?
You know, it was sadly really early on. Because I can't really speak for him because I don't know what was going on. All I know is that there would be these like long periods of time that he would just not talk to me. Just suddenly like I was invisible and he wouldn't acknowledge me or see me or talk to me. I thought I had done something really, really wrong. And I would just be going out of my mind trying to ask him, like, what did I do? What did I do? And he just, honestly, there would just be no response, no words, not even look at me. He'd just walk out the door to school. And I would just think, I must have done something horrid because for me to treat you like that, you would have had to really mess things up. And there were many, it would be like days, weeks. And I remember just thinking, what have I done? Like, why didn't I stay in New York? Like, but you have no concept. You think you're supposed to be there to fix it. You know, you think like, if I just am better, if I just be better, if I just communicate better, if I just am better, maybe I make better meals, if I keep the house better, if I communicate better, it will get better. then he will love me the right way, the way I would feel loved. And I think I lived 9 years thinking that I was doing marriage the way everyone does marriage.
Well, and that's the other thing is like, we are taught that marriage is hard.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be hard, and it makes you a better person, and it makes you a better couple. And it's like, it's funny for how much we talk up marriage, and it's the ultimate goal, and it's all we want. But then you also just constantly hear of like how difficult it is. So then when it's difficult and hard, you're like, I guess this is just what marriage is. I remember like, I don't even remember what the fight was. I remember us having like some argument and some fight, and super young, dirt poor, totally feeling lonely, even though we didn't live that far from my parents' house. And I remember being so mad, getting in the car and driving around and crying and being like, oh, I have to go home and talk to him about this. I'm not allowed to talk to anyone else about this, because I had been taught and told that you don't like share your difficulties in your marriage with anyone else besides your spouse. Like, you work it out with them. You don't call your mom, you don't call your sister, you don't call your friends, you don't share these hard things. And that was so insanely isolating. And I understand the advice to a point of like, make sure that you're talking to your spouse about these things and not just voicing it to these other people. But now that I feel like it's acceptable to talk shit on my husband with other people, it allows me to be able to talk to him about things better, that I can step back, that I can call you and be like, listen, I'm going crazy. This is what happened. And you can give me like an objective point of view. You can tell me if I'm being gaslit or if like what I'm feeling is valid. You can like, it helps me work it out, and I can show up to my marriage better because I can talk to other people about it.
Yeah.
And you opening up about like your divorce and your difficulties in marriage was really, really helpful to me. It's very, very isolating that nobody talks about these things. They just say marriage is really, really hard.
Yeah.
But then that's it.
You don't know like the level of hard is normal.
Yeah.
I remember
how hard, like how long do you stay through the hard?
Right.
Is this a hard you stay through and figure out? Or is this like oh no, I'm gone. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, but also like we were taught that if you keep your promise to be married forever, that eventually it would work itself out, even if that's in heaven, right? Like eventually it's going to be all right. So I was there for the long haul. I was there for like all of it. I mean, it kind of didn't matter how bad it got, because I literally thought that if I stay true, I'm a good person. Keep all of my promises, and then even if it all was crappy, me being a good person would save us even in the afterlife. I believed that. So I was there for all of it. I remember in the beginning talking.
Not an option.
Yeah, no. I mean, it really wasn't. I remember talking to a girl really in the beginning, probably the first year of our marriage. I remember talking to someone that was getting divorced during her first year of marriage. And I remember her telling me how he was abusive, and she would say all these horrible things. And I literally just thought, she's kind of crazy. She doesn't have it all together. She can't figure it out. It's probably not as bad as she's saying it is. Like, I was horrible. And also at the same time, I'm literally like in a relationship that is really toxic to me, and I am not recognizing it at all, because I'm thinking I'm good enough to fix it. If I do better, it will get better. I never had that understanding that what she was talking about had anything to do with me. I just thought she should just try harder. That's horrible.
It is.
I know.
But we were thinking, like you said, it's not just that we were thinking about that other people. We were in those relationships.
Yeah.
We were thinking about them ourselves. It's been my marriage has gotten significantly better in the last, it's always gotten better. We've been married 16 years now, but I think just even in the last few months, it's been a little like, it's so good that it's a little triggering to realize how hard and crappy it was, if that makes sense. And be like, oh
Yeah.
shit, it was bad.
Ugh.
We were broken people. And I think that is, we've talked a lot about what marriage was for us. And that's another thing of like, it was two broken people that got together and you fixed each other. Or, like you're two halves and together you make a whole and you share everything together and your whole world is each other. And I think that is the biggest thing for me, if we can go into kind of like how we think of marriage now, is that it really started. So both of us essentially worked the AA program for Overeaters, and it was the OA program, Overeaters Anonymous. You go through that program, and I'm not working it right now. You're not like working the program right now, but I learned so much.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing that I learned that really stuck is that like I am responsible for my own thoughts and feelings and emotions, and so is everyone else.
Oh yeah, that was a huge awakening.
Huge.
I didn't learn that until my second marriage.
Yeah. Right. And that like I am a whole person that is in charge of figuring out like what I need, what needs I need met, and I am capable of fulfilling those needs. I don't have to rely on my spouse or anyone else to do those things for me. And he is the same. He is responsible for his own needs and he's capable of fulfilling them. And I have nothing to do with like his emotions and how he's feeling.
Yeah. And that's such a hard one to navigate, because when you go from fulfilling each other's needs, kind of, right? It feels super selfish to be like, I'm not in charge of your happiness anymore. Like, I'm in charge of my own. And you're in charge of yours. Like, you're like, wait, but you used to be in charge of mine. So, it feels selfish to pull back and like shift and take care of yourself and not take care of them. It's really hard to do when you're not doing it at the same time. I mean, I was thrown into, in my first marriage, my first husband had an affair, and I was in the thick of my marriage being who I was. I was in the thick of creating the happiness. I was 100% in charge of him being a happy person. That it was my existence. And when I realized that he was completely destroying his entire family and his life, it wasn't that he was just destroying my life. It was that I had failed as a wife. I had failed him. I had failed what I understood my position to be, because my own husband was destroying himself.
Pause for a moment.
Pausing.
Speaking of husbands, I just got my lunch delivery.
Lunch delivery.
Salad and some water. Thanks, husband. I won't eat on camera. I don't think anyone wants to hear those munching noises.
Well, we were going to wrap it up in a minute and
no, that's not happening. No way.
And that's not going to happen.
No.
So
Okay.
We're going to just keep going.
We are.
A half-hour podcast for us is probably impossible, but one day we'll figure it out.
We just 45 minutes to an hour is probably the sweet spot. Who was I to think that we could only talk
unpack marriage in a half an hour? No. Have you even had like a phone call that's a half an hour?
No, never.
No.
Okay.
Okay. So I got divorced, right?
Yes.
And it was in the thick of me. I mean, it just destroyed everything. And I think that's the thing that's so fascinating to me about marriage and the perspective that I had, is how dangerous it is to tell people that your spouse or your partner is your other half, because you cannot control this other half. And when you think that it is your existence, that it is your like literal key into heaven, or it is your entire life, that person is your entire life, if something happens to them, if they die, if they cheat on you, if they lie to you, if they're just kind of generally crappy, it means that half of you is generally crappy or dead. Like, that's not good.
No.
Bad.
No.
And it just destroyed me. And, I ended up getting divorced and thinking I was half of a human. So what do? I hurry and get married so I can be a whole human, right? And
you got married so fast.
I got married. I mean, our divorce was final in July. I meet a guy in September and we got married the following March. I mean, we were engaged January and then we just kind of like, we'll just get around to getting married whenever. And we ended up going to the courthouse, getting married in March. And I think we both knew that we were pretty broken, but we were just oblivious to it. And I was just hurrying to try to put my life together, kind of going back to what you said. I believe that if two people were going to work hard enough and we were trying to do the right things, that we could make anything work. So it's kind of like, well, the better way of living is to be married because that's the better way of living. I mean, that's all I thought. Yeah. I don't think I ever had any permission or concept that you could be single and useful and fulfilled and
have a whole life
person of you. I didn't know that.
You could be single and have a whole life.
No.
And then it counted. It counted.
Oh,
the life.
Single midlife women were like a tragedy. It was sad and devastating.
They call single people single. It is the singles. The ward is what a group of a congregation is called, and it's called the singles ward. That is how we label people that are single.
A bunch of people. Yeah, it was a bunch of people that couldn't figure out how to get married. I mean, honestly, it's people literally refer to it as the land of misfit toys.
Oh,
they couldn't find their person. So
yeah,
it's so bad, and nobody wants to be in that. I don't want to go to single activities. So I was like, I am a married person. That's what I am.
Yeah. It's not what is your career? Have you gotten a degree? What do you do in life? Are you married?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you married? And what does your husband do? I mean, that's a typical. What does your husband do? That is an introduction to every party, every family, anything.
No, it's still people still are so what does your husband do? And I want to be I'm famous, okay?
I'm famous.
Why don't you ask me what I do?
What makes me crazy is we'll be sitting and somebody will ask Tage what he does and he'll explain it. And then they'll kind of all be, the second conversation oh, what do you do? And Tage will be she's an influencer. I'm shut up. I am an author. Anyway, that's a conversation, but okay. So here's something that's really interesting about when I first got remarried. And this is the thing that made me shift my entire perspective going and taught me I am a whole person is when my second marriage started looking like my first marriage. But I was not married to a narcissist. My first marriage, I was married to a narcissist. It was very toxic. My second marriage, I was not. Even though we were both broken, even though we were both desperate, he was not a mean person.
Yeah.
Right. And I knew that he cared about me and that he loved me. And it was a much healthier relationship in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is the dynamic between us looked the same. And I tell the story in my book and I've told you where he likes rice and I like noodles and we both work full time and I come home and I was home first. I'm making dinner. I wanted noodles. I made stroganoff or something. Absolutely noodles, 100% noodles. So I make noodles knowing that he's going to come home and be like, I wish you had made rice. But I had been reading that book called Why Men Love Bitches. Did you read that book? Anyway,
I never read it, but you've talked about it a lot.
So yeah, I mean, it literally taught me to that my likes matter and that me showing up matters and that, leaning into the things that I care about matter. And it's not like I'm passionate about noodles, but it was just like these tiny baby steps to like showing up, like tiny baby steps. And so I made the noodles. He comes home late. First, he was late, and I started eating before he came home because I was hungry. But I wasn't mad that he wasn't home yet. I just was like, I'm hungry. I'm going to eat. And I remember I was sitting at the table, I'm eating, and he walked in and he was a little like, oh, you didn't wait for me? Not because he's a jerk, but just because like that's how we functioned.
Yeah,
like that's how I taught our relationship to be. That's how I was showing up. So I was like, yeah, I was just hungry, and I wasn't mad that he said anything. I just was like doing my thing. And he sits down, he serves up dinner, and he's like, don't you think rice would have gone better with this? And I'm like, you can make yourself some rice. But it was the first time I felt like I was showing up. And that's the weirdest example. But it was the first time that I wasn't mad and I wasn't resentful. I was just eating the damn noodles because that's what I wanted. And it felt like he was a little annoyed, but it was like the first shift in the relationship where I got to show up 100%. And we went on the rest of the night just having a regular night where I was a whole person. I didn't wait for him to eat. I didn't make the dinner that he wanted and put myself aside. I showed up all of me. And I think that was the first step to me being like, I'm a whole person in this marriage. And it changes your relationship when there's two whole people. But
absolutely. Yeah. And I have known so much of this, and I think I've gradually been working towards that. We have gradually been working towards that. But this shift is, so my youngest, she just went to kindergarten, and it's full day kindergarten. So I just went from being like a full stay-at-home mom who was homeschooling on and off to being at home all day without kids. And Carrie lost his job. So now I'm essentially working full time, and he's looking for a job, but doing stay-at-home dad stuff. And that has drastically like pushed this new perspective about marriage and like who I am as a whole person to the forefront. And we are talking about it very intensely and having these really great conversations of like what we thought marriage was when we got married and what we think of it now. And essentially, like I told him the other day, like, I don't want to be a wife. Like I don't want to be a wife. I don't want to be married in the way that I always viewed like being a wife and being married. Like I want a wife to just be like, it's not a title or a name that means anything other than I'm married to someone.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I like do these things for my husband and I show up for him and I make him feel loved and I make sure that X, Y, and Z. Like I want to be a whole person, and I want you to be a whole person, and I want to do life alongside you. I want a best friend to hang out with every single day. I don't want a husband. I want a best friend that I enjoy spending time with. And that like, I don't know, we just treat friends so differently. At least I do or did. Like I would give them the benefit of the doubt. Like it was just like, oh, you don't owe me anything. Like I just enjoy it. We're just here to like cheer each other on and be good company. You don't owe me.
Yeah.
I don't expect anything from you. I just want you here so I can hang out with you because I enjoy being with you. And that's what I want from my marriage.
Well, and that perspective changes everything. I mean, I was on a Facebook feed a few days ago and somebody was saying that they had found out that their husband was watching porn and what are they going to do and how do they approach it? And it seems like it's an addiction. And before, I think in my first marriage, I would freak out about that. I would totally freak out. I would take it personally. I would make it all about me. I'd be like, he's lying to me. He's doing this, he's doing that. But when you look at things like they're your friend, if you found out that your friend had this addiction or was doing something that was like harming themselves, I'm not saying porn does. I'm just saying that this was that particular conversation. you would approach it very differently in the like, hey, I noticed this, like, what's going on with you? Right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's
It was like you were
very different.
talking
You can
about,
like show up for them.
and like you were talking about before, if they are your other half, then their actions say something about you. But if you're
Yep.
just two whole people, then your life, like their actions don't necessarily have anything to do with you. You didn't
Yes.
cause it. You're not the reason for it. It's not a slight against you. You don't have to be offended by it. It just, they are their own. You are your own. And yeah, it's totally, you're right. Approaching it like friends is totally better. And I don't even want to say better, because I think that also it comes down to that we strive, because of how we were raised, to find the right thing.
Right.
And I'm really working hard to realize that there is no right way to do marriage. There's no one right way.
Yep. I think
It's
that was
what
the
I want.
damaging thing
Yeah,
to us, is that we were
exactly.
taught one right way. And
Yes.
then here you and I are, that think very similar, that approach things similarly, that one right way we were taught was very toxic to people like you and I, where
Yes.
we are independent. We do have these like big hopes and I mean, whatever we are, like, and it just, that framework of marriage and wife was suffocating us. It was muting us out. It was making us dumb ourselves way down. And it was also putting us in a situation where we were vulnerable to whatever actions our partner was doing. It like you said, it said something about us.
Yeah.
And that type of marriage didn't work for us.
Yeah.
And you know what's crazy is that learning this in my second marriage, that like, oh, you're your own person and your actions have nothing to do with me, has helped me heal the girl that was cheated on, because that very much happened to me and it was very much about me not being enough. And now that I've learned that, oh, wait a minute, his affair had nothing to do with me. Absolutely nothing to do with me.
Nothing.
Like
Nothing.
I kind of, it would be, I mean, obviously, you know, you can't go back, but I always think, if I had been a whole person, what would that have conversation have been? What would that have been? Could I have been like a friend? Could I have shown up differently? You know, could it have been not about me? I mean, I don't know that it'd change any of the circumstances, but it just is interesting to recognize, you like, me being a whole person in a relationship changes everything. And we keep waiting for the other person to change. I mean, how long have I waited for even my current husband to change so that we
Yeah.
could be happy, you know, and we could have this really fulfilling relationship. And I think that's one thing that's been really, really hard for me, is to really let go that I am in charge of my own happiness. It can be really overwhelming, because when you're taught that somebody else is going to make you happy and give you their dream life, and then all of a sudden that's not true and you're in charge of your own, I think it can be really, as empowering as it can be, I think there's also days that it's really overwhelming to realize, like, oh, it's just me. Like, no one's coming. No one's coming. No one's coming to save me. No one's coming to swoop me up. And anytime that people do, it should just be kind of bonus. It should just be an accessory. But in the end, like, it is just me. And like I said, some days that's the best news ever. And other days, it really kills every freaking Disney movie there ever was.
Well, and it's like, it's really overwhelming in the sense of like trying to figure out what I want to, right? Like practicing this idea, because I never was taught to do what I want to do. We have a list of a bullet point list of how you do life. And I never had to think about what I wanted. It was always, what does God want? What does the church want? What have I been told is best? And even if it is individual, it's still me praying, saying what is best for me. It's not me
Yeah.
thinking about what I want.
Not
It's
for
what is
yourself.
God telling me to do. And so it's very overwhelming when you suddenly have all of these options of like, okay, this is what marriage could be. This is what it could look like. This is how you can interact with your husband. What do you want it to be? and what do they want it to be? Do those things line up? And how do you make that work?
Yeah.
And how do you let go of some of, like you said, like the want, and just like, well, what works?
It's wild to have all the options. I mean, last year I had the same conversation. I don't want to be wife. I don't want to be married. I literally thought I was out the door. We lived as roommates. I got my own bedroom. We lived as roommates. Part of having my own room kind of enlivened our relationship in a way where like hanging out, getting together, having sex was like, it was
like
not, yeah, it was fun because it wasn't expected and it wasn't just, I'm just available all the time. But also it gave me this new autonomy in my own home, in my own life. And it felt dangerous and reckless and scary because that's just not how marriage is supposed to be. That's not how marriage goes. You don't have your own bedroom. I remember talking to my 10-year-old and telling her, hey, mom's going to get her own room. I don't want it to be scary. I'm a grown up. I just want to try it. I think it will be neat. And she was just kind of like weirded out with it for a little bit. And one of the things that she said that kind of took me way off guard was she said, but then dad will be all alone. And she never said, but mom will be all alone. She was like, but dad will be all alone. And it was the stark realization that already at 9 years old, she was realizing that I'm in charge of making sure he's okay.
It's like your job and her job to make sure that dad is okay. Oh.
And I was like, oh, okay. I definitely need my own room. I definitely need to do that. And at the same time, weirdly, I still wanted to like fix him in the sense of like, you need to make sure that you're independent and you're doing your own life so that your daughter doesn't think that she has to grow up to, take care of her husband and make sure he's not alone. But you can't be in charge of what people do, and all I can do is not be in charge of that. Right? Like he can still act alone. He can still act sad if he wanted to. He can still say things like, oh, I wish you would sleep with me. Or, I mean, he can do that if he wants to. He doesn't very much anymore, but he still can. But I think that's the thing. We do all of these things thinking that it's going to fix the other person, even if it's for ourselves, right? Like, it's like, we still want the other person to do what we want them to do. And
there is just so much relief that comes from allowing someone to screw up. And I understand now that it's not screwing up because it's just my idea of screwing up and I don't know the right way to do it. But to just be like, oh, my husband is allowed to show up as a dad the way he wants to show up as a dad, even if it's not the way I think he should do it. Or he's allowed to show up at work or when we were in college like he's allowed to fail. He's allowed to do these things and it doesn't have anything to do with me.
I saw a TikTok. I mean, something that's been going around for a long time, but she's talking about how she left her 14-year marriage and she's in her like 60s. And she said, I stood back and watched how he loved and just evaluated if I liked being loved the way he loves. And after 14 years, I decided like, I don't want to be loved like this anymore. She wasn't trying to fix him. She wasn't telling him that he was loving her wrong or that he needed to do it even differently. She just very objectively was like, that's how you love. Thanks for sharing. No, thank you. And I thought that's, I think, a really amazing, respectful approach to be able to see what people do and how they do them. I think we've been taught for so long that we're supposed to conform ourselves, like mesh ourselves and change ourselves to the point that we finally fit into this piece, these pieces. I mean, you've seen the book, The Missing Piece by Shel Silverstein.
Yeah.
And, you know, we think that if we just like chip away, then finally we'll like fit. But what if it's just not like that? What if you just roll along doing your life? And sometimes there's people that will roll along with you, and that's beautiful. And I think in my marriage now, I'm trying to learn to roll along and let him be his piece and see where this goes, right? Like it feels scary to even say that like publicly or out loud, just because I think we've been so taught that like marriage is forever and you stick it out and you work on it and you make it work. And if you don't, then you're failing and you're giving up. But I don't feel like that anymore. Now I feel like I have grown to love him exactly who he is and how he loves. I have this full respect for how he does life, even if it's like not how I would do life. I don't have this need to like fix how he does life anymore. And how he does life has nothing to do with me. And I get to even be the benefit from it. Or I can choose to be like, I don't know, thank you. Right. But I don't have to shame him or judge him or fix it. It just is. And how nice is that to, when you're giving that, you get to do the same thing. Like I get to do my life and how I want to do it. Mm-hmm. And if it works together, then isn't that nice?
Yeah. I mean, I think most people, whether they grew up religious or not, like we have this idea of divorce, that it's a failure, right? Mm-hmm. And that it has to happen under like horrible circumstances. And I understand like the benefits of staying together and making it work, obviously. But and by the way, this is like such a nuanced conversation. It's so hard. I feel like in today's world, especially in talk on social media, people are so black and white. And so you say like you can live your life and do what you want and you're not responsible for your husband's feelings. Oh, well, does that mean that you just gonna like sleep with people and cheat on and do whatever you want? Like, no, that's not what we mean. Right. Obviously, yeah. It's such a nuanced conversation. But there's this, what was I talking about? My brain went too fast. I hate when this happens. You were talking, I was thinking about multiple things, and what was I just talking about? Before I went into the nuance spiel. Divorce. It's so, you are different. At least I am. Maybe everybody doesn't grow up and turn into different people, but like I am a different person than I was. 3 years ago, I'm a different person than I was 3 years ago, let alone 16 years ago. Yeah. I am a different person, and my ideas of marriage are different, and I want different things out of life and from a spouse and in relationships than I did when I was 16. And I think it is ridiculous that commitment wins over change all of the time in everyone's brain. Like, but you made a commitment when you were 22 years old to be with this person forever. Well, I didn't know when I was 22 that like I would change. I didn't know that like life isn't what I thought it was at 22. Like, why does that win? Why is that such an awe-inspiring thing to stay married in like a relationship that you don't like with a person that maybe you don't see eye to eye on anymore? Why does that win?
I honestly don't know. I wish it was so much more, what's the word? Like loose, open, like available for conversation to say, like, people are going to change and you don't have to force yourself to stay. Like, why can't it be that you just move with flow and move? It's so tricky though, because I say all this, but like there's kids. Like I am one of the people that have kids that were massively affected by divorce, right? So it's easy to say like, why can't we just divorce whenever it's not working out? Like, well, because there are massive there are other people involved.
No, and absolutely.
And it's so tricky because I wish that it was that
understands that. But I think especially, I mean, yeah, I understand that. That's the nuance, right? That there are other people that are affected by this. I don't know, I guess I'm under the opinion that if like things are going well for me in our marriage and we are cordial and in love and have a good life, like I'm here until the kids are 18, right? Like if we can make this work, we're here. We're doing the best that we can because I don't want to do that to my kids. But I look at these older couples that they're, people are always like, why did marriages last so much longer back then than they do now? And it's like, well, because women didn't have autonomy. Like, it wasn't actually because they were more in love and they were actually working on the marriage. They were fine being in a really shitty marriage and forced themselves to stay or didn't have any other options. And yeah, I'm absolutely not saying that like just divorce willy-nilly, it's fine. I just think my perspective on divorce has drastically shifted into being like the biggest failure that you could ever fail at, to understanding when that happens and being open to that if that's ever like our course.
Well, and I think that we were taught you either have a good marriage or divorce. Like definitely in my first marriage, those were the options. It's either going to be a good, healthy marriage or it's not going to be marriage at all. And those were my two options. And now I feel like the options are so much bigger. Like there's a million options. Not all of them are for us. Not all of them are for me. But I mean, there are people that are functioning really beautifully in open marriages, which I didn't even know was a thing. Maybe it wasn't even a thing before. Maybe that's a new thing. I don't know. But that's a thing. I think in me getting my own bedroom, I didn't file anything. I didn't do anything legally, but I got my own bedroom. We split up bills for a little while. I got my own bank account, right? Like there was this autonomy that I didn't know. Like, hey, we don't have to jump into divorce. How about we just try something else, right? Instead of like, let's think, oh, I want to be going on vacations and dates, and I'm not really getting that in my marriage. So then I was like, okay, if vacations and dates are important to me, then how do I implement that into my life? And I started making vacations with friends. I started traveling a lot just because traveling was important to me. I started going out with friends a lot. We would go dancing and out to fancy dinners that I used to think it didn't count 100% unless it was with my husband, and that friends were this like backup plan or plan B. When he didn't take me out, then I guess I'd go out with my friends because like we're not going out and I'd be mad and whatever. Or I'd go on vacation with my friend, fine, because he's not going on vacation with me. And now it's not like that. Now it's like, no, I travel. I like adventure. I like to snowshoe in the winter and you don't. And that's okay.
It doesn't mean anything about your marriage. It doesn't mean anything about them. And I think that is why it's so great for me that like divorce is on the table now, because I get to choose to be in my marriage. I get to choose my husband because I have the option of leaving and I decide to stay. And isn't that better that like I choose him every single morning instead of like feeling obligated, whether it's like religious reasons, societal reasons, or this idea of like, he's my other half and I can't live without him. I have to have him here. Like, no, I can absolutely live without you, but I choose to be here because I enjoy you, because I love you, because I like this life with you. And in becoming like this whole person and allowing my husband to be his own whole person, like it sounds like in a lot of ways it would take away from that romance, right? It would mean that your like marriage isn't as good, it isn't as like passionate and lovely. For us, it has only gotten easier and better and more passionate, more romantic, allowing each other to like be who we are and accepting each other 100% for who we are.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating as you like start to let go of things that you thought were supposed to be a certain way and you start being a whole version of yourself. It's fascinating, like what works better when you thought it couldn't work like that. I mean, honestly, right now I am still trying to navigate my new belief system in my relationship where my marriage is not my whole life. It doesn't consume all of my thoughts. It doesn't determine whether I'm doing good or not. I'm still navigating the idea that my marriage is kind of an accessory to my life and that it is not my life. And it's just a very different way of how I show up in the marriage. It's like, hey, I want a vacation. And he's like, but we just went on a vacation. And instead of me thinking like, oh my gosh, how come vacations aren't important to you? Blah, blah, blah. I just notice. And then I plan a vacation for myself because I think like, oh, I need a vacation. Right? I'm not saying that
so great.
make it so that he plans one. Yeah.
And you don't have to look at that and be like, oh, he doesn't like love me and respects me because he's not like showing up the way that I want him to, or I'm being rude because I'm expecting this out of him. And like, I just need to figure out how to not like, there's so much mental load that it's gone now. Yeah. Because I just let things be how they are instead of deciding that him acting a certain way or doing a certain thing or not doing a certain thing means something about me and our marriage and where we're at. Like it doesn't mean anything anymore. I don't have to think about everything all of the time anymore. Why didn't he do the dishes tonight? Does that mean he doesn't love me? Does that mean that he doesn't respect me? Does he expect me to do it? Like it's all gone. Yeah. There's not a thought anymore.
Otherwise, just if I want to clean house, I clean my house.
Yeah.
Like if I want dinner, I'll make dinner. Like I just live my life, and it's just drastically different. And I think that, if it gets to a point where I'm like, oh, I don't want to live like this anymore, then I can go do something else. Right. But for right now, it's like, I like having my person. I like having the father of my child living in the same house. Like we are good friends. We have so much fun together. And right now it's really, really good. I just think it's so fascinating to change perspectives in the middle of your marriage and then have to figure out how to like navigate that. I mean, quite honestly, he married a Mormon girl that was going to save him and make him dinner and do his laundry. That's who he married. Yeah. He married that girl. Now I am not Mormon. I don't make dinner. I'm a little famous. Like I am all the things that he did not really want or sign up for. And so this goes both ways, 100%.
Oh, 100%. It is so lovely to be married to someone. And I'm very lucky that he is willing and wanting to change with me and to figure out this new life with me, because I think it's completely reasonable and I know this happens to a lot of people, to be like, this is not what I signed up for. This was not the plan. I don't want this version of you because I wasn't planning on that. And that's valid, I think. And I think that's valid.
Absolutely.
That's not my spouse, and that we get to have these amazing conversations and to figure this out together. It's really fun. As hard as it is, it's really fun to be doing this with him.
It is fun. It's definitely fun. I mean, Tage and I have had a lot of firsts. We get to go to bars now and, have these crazy conversations that we would have never had before. I mean, he has been with me through this whole transformation, and that, that's not taken lightly. Like that's a big deal to have a person that can be there through it all. And I'm super grateful for that. We could talk about marriage and relationships forever, but it's
really quick. I do want to say that I talk to people frequently that don't have the luxury or luck of doing that with their spouse, and they're still able to be in a relationship with them and want them to, people who have left the church, but their spouse stayed or their perspectives change. And I always highly recommend like going to therapy, find friends, like you don't have to feel alone just because your spouse isn't going with you. Like, go to a therapist, find someone that you can do, that you can have these conversations with if you can't have them with your spouse. There are people there.
Yes. I would also recommend reading Why Men Love Bitches to find your own voice and your own autonomy. And there's a new book that I'm listening to. Have you listened to Codependent No More?
No.
I think that's what it's called. I'm like halfway in. It's been highly recommended by lots of other podcasters.
Okay.
I like it. It's a little repetitive, but the idea is really good. But I feel like I kind of got that idea from the Why Men Love Bitches. But I just think the awareness of being codependent is the thing that can help you get out, right?
Awesome. Yes. Can I not recommend? I was going to say this earlier. Love languages is not. It's not real. Don't read that. If you're gonna read up about how it's totally bull. The guy isn't a doctor. He's like this heavily crazy religious fanatic. No on the 5 languages.
No. Yeah.
No. Okay.
It's so damaging to be like, yeah.
No.
Anything that puts people in boxes, honestly. Don't do that.
No more boxes. We're not doing boxes.
Don't put people in boxes. We're not living in any box. No. Make boxes. Your own. If you want to live in a box, make your own damn box, right?
Make your own box. Your own rules.
You really need a box. Make your own. But gosh, should we call mom and tell her that we made a podcast about marriage?
And we didn't even
fascinating. We didn't even talk about the marriage that we literally grew up.
We were scared we were gonna say something. They got married. Are you calling her right now?
No, I can.
Oh, I'm going to call. I'll talk while it's ringing. No, that was the other thing. I mean, it did influence my marriage and my dating. They met when they were 14 and fell madly in love. My mom was obsessed with my dad.
I don't even know if this is going to work.
Anyway. But yeah, that influence. That was the ultimate love story. Hey, Mom.
She's not going to answer.
We need to have her on sometime.
Yeah, we do.
We need to have a topic.
I haven't called her for a few weeks and she's kind of freaking out that I haven't called her. So now she's going to want to talk to me for a very long time. And I'll be like, hi, bye.
No, I know. Because whenever I go radio silent, she starts freaking out because that's usually when I go bad. So, okay. Well, that's the end of our podcast.
Yeah, that's the end of the podcast. I miss Stacey.
Let's end right there. Bye.
Bye. Good luck with your marriage or not. Bye.